Have you ever felt like your goodness is being used against you? Like every step you take is a performance, balancing carefully on a tightrope of kindness. Always agreeable, constantly available, just to keep the peace, just to hold everything from collapsing. You're not even sure when this silent performance began. All you know is that somewhere along the way, you were taught that to be a good person means to be quiet, to please, to sacrifice your own truth for the comfort of others. But what if that definition of goodness, the one you've been clinging to for years, isn't actually noble, but learned? What if it's not wisdom you're living by, but conditioning? The Stoics didn't see goodness as weakness. To them, virtue was not about being liked or being soft. It was about being strong. And strength doesn't mean you let people walk all over you. In fact, true goodness never required you to make yourself small. In this video, we're going to uncover something many people feel but rarely talk about: the hidden cost of being endlessly agreeable. The silent price of being harmless. And the quiet rebellion that begins the moment you stop asking others for permission to exist. If you've ever given so much, only to feel invisible, if you've ever wondered why kindness doesn't seem to earn you the respect it should, stay with me. Because we're about to challenge everything you thought it meant to be good. Part 1. The Stoic cost of being good. When was the last time you stopped to really question what society respects? Not what it says it values, but what it actually rewards. Look around. Who are the ones with power, influence, and voice? Is it always the kindest, most generous, most selfless people? Or is it the ones with clear boundaries, the ones who stay composed, who cannot be manipulated? It's not easy to admit, but the truth is this: goodness alone doesn't guarantee respect. In fact, when kindness is stripped of strength, it often becomes a path to invisibility. You can spend years showing up, being loyal, helpful, endlessly available, but the moment you stop serving someone's agenda, you don't just get overlooked, you get erased. No explanation, no apology, just replaced. The Stoics understood this long before it became a painful modern truth. Marcus Aurelius, both a Roman emperor and philosopher, lived with compassion. Yes, but never at the expense of discipline. He didn't confuse virtue with surrender. He knew that without discernment, goodness becomes a burden that others will gladly use for their gain. Seneca warned us too. To lose yourself in service to others isn't humility, it's self-betrayal. Every time you try to avoid conflict, say yes when you mean no, or keep the peace at your own expense, you send a quiet message to the world: I don't matter. You don't need to say it out loud. The world hears it in your silence. And when you carry no weight, the world offers no respect. You're not seen as a human being, but as a tool. Not a presence, but a convenience. Why are people who say no more respected than those who always say yes? Why do those who speak directly seem to command more space, more attention? Because they haven't traded their dignity for acceptance. They don't shrink themselves to be liked. They don't plead to be noticed. Instead, they decide to be seen through clarity, through grounded principles, and through presence that doesn't apologize for itself. The Stoic path isn't about being feared. It's about being unshakable in what you stand for. That's where real respect begins, not in shouting or forcing others to listen, but in the quiet confidence that you won't be swayed by flattery or broken by rejection. Machiavelli once said that if a ruler must choose between being loved or feared, he should choose fear. But the Stoics offer a wiser path: choose respect. Not the kind that depends on dominance, but the kind that comes from stillness. From being someone who can act with strength when it matters. Someone who carries a quiet consequence, not as a threat, but as a reflection of deep integrity. That kind of presence can't be faked, and it can't be ignored. But what happens when that inner strength threatens the comfort of others? What happens when you stop playing the role they're used to, and start standing in your truth? We'll explore that next, in part 2. That kind of inner strength, the presence rooted in integrity, doesn't need to shout. It doesn't need to force itself into the spotlight. It simply refuses to be ignored. So, take a quiet moment and ask yourself this. What is it inside you that keeps chasing approval from outside? What is that quiet ache that urges you to soften your words? Hold back your truth, and betray your time and peace just to be accepted? So often, what we label as kindness is not a sign of strength at all. It's a strategy, a desperate attempt to avoid discomfort, to run from conflict, to be liked at any cost. But the Stoics would warn us, a peace built on the erasure of self is not peace at all. It's a quiet war against your own worth, and that's exactly what we're about to examine. Where does this compulsive need to be liked actually come from? And how can you begin to reclaim your self-respect, not by raising your voice, but by standing still, speaking less, and letting your silence speak volumes? Part 2. The Stoic origin of pleasing others. No one is born needing approval. You weren't wired to please. You weren't born craving validation. That instinct, the constant urge to be agreeable, to be liked, to be seen as good, was never your natural state. It was your conditioning. From the very first moments of your life, the world began shaping you, not through wisdom, but through correction. You were taught that acceptance must be earned through compliance. Don't do that. It's not nice. Be polite. Don't say it like that. You'll upset them. Sound familiar? Over time, you absorbed a silent but powerful lesson. To be loved, you must not disturb. So, you began to clip your sharp edges. You dimmed your light. You learned to exchange honesty for harmony, voice for silence, truth for comfort, and with every small surrender, every swallowed frustration, you handed over a piece of your will, what the Stoics called your prohairesis, your inner moral choice. What started as a clever way to survive slowly hardened into a habit of self-erasure. Today, you might wrap it in words like empathy, humility, or kindness, but if you look closer, beneath the surface, what do you really see? When you say, yes, even though your soul whispers, no. When you bite your tongue until your silence turns toxic. When you stay quiet not out of grace, but out of fear, is that still virtue? Or is it the slow erosion of your clarity? The Stoics had a name for this. Weak assent, a surrender not of the body, but of the inner self. It's not kindness if it costs you your truth. It's not virtue if it demands obedience to fear. Let's take the story of Elias. He was known for being gentle, thoughtful, always calm. At work, he never hesitated to lend a hand. At home, he avoided conflict. Among friends, he was admired for his patience and composure. But inside, Elias was exhausted. He had said yes to things he didn't agree with. He'd tolerated disrespect in the name of keeping the peace. And over time, piece by piece, he lost touch with his own boundaries. One evening, after being passed over for a promotion, yet again, Elias didn't feel anger. He felt nothing. That was the moment he realized he hadn't just silenced his pain. He had silenced himself. This is what happens when we confuse acceptance with worth. We start believing that being agreeable will keep us safe. But safety built on silence isn't safety at all. It's a quiet prison. As Elias realized, when being agreeable becomes your default way of living, you are no longer being loved, you are being imprisoned. Because a so-called safety built on silence is nothing more than a well-decorated cage. The philosopher Seneca once warned, "He who always agrees with the crowd, even in peaceful times, is already preparing his own downfall." Why? Because the fear of being disliked is not humility in the Stoic sense. It is slavery to how others perceive you. It places the judgment of the world above your own reason. And over time, it tears your integrity apart, piece by piece. So be honest with yourself. Why does saying no make you feel guilty? Why does expressing dissatisfaction feel like betrayal? Why do you equate self-respect with selfishness? The Stoics would answer bluntly, because you've lost your inner center. You've mistaken virtue for performance. And this performance, you know it, is exhausting. It has no end. Today, they like you. Tomorrow, they don't. Meanwhile, your real self, honest, sharp, vibrant, slowly withers away in the shadows. This good person, mask, polite, gentle, agreeable, was never truly yours. It was stitched together from fear of rejection, fear of exclusion, fear of not being enough. But fear has never been a true Stoic teacher. It distorts your vision. It forces false choices. It robs you of ataraxia, that inner peace born only when you live in alignment with your reason and chosen values. True virtue does not bend for approval. It stands firm, like a stone pillar in a storm. Marcus Aurelius never begged to be loved. He prayed to be just. Epictetus never sought to be understood by others. He focused on understanding himself first. That, too, is your task, to reclaim your mind, reclaim your values, reclaim your voice. The world may not understand the boundaries you set, and that's okay. Let them misunderstand, because the cost of pleasing everyone is the permanent sacrifice of who you are. But there is another way, a more conscious path. To find it, we must learn not only from the Stoics, but also from thinkers like Machiavelli, who understood that appearance is a kind of currency. But if you don't control it, you will become a slave to it. In the next part, we'll explore what Machiavelli's The Prince can teach us about escaping the trap of appearing good, and instead, becoming someone who commands respect through clarity, presence, and unapologetic strength. Part 3. The Stoic strength behind the illusion of goodness. If you're still walking through life believing that simply being good will earn you recognition and reward, pause. Take a hard look. The Stoics never promised that virtue would be celebrated by the world. They taught that the wise must carry both virtue and vigilance, because the world often admires appearance more than essence. Marcus Aurelius, a philosopher emperor known for his compassion and his iron will, once wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." But he never said that being good would protect you. In fact, he understood this all too well. Even if you act with fairness, if you appear weak, you will be treated as weak. You may live with honesty. You may lead with kindness. But if your presence carries no weight, if you are easy to ignore, you will be ignored. Epictetus took it further. He taught that inner virtue alone is not enough. You must also learn how to carry yourself in a world that cannot see your heart, only the shadow you cast. You are a role, he said, and your task is to play that role with excellence. But remember, not everyone in the audience is watching you with admiration. Previously, we uncovered a hard truth. If your kindness isn't accompanied by a strong presence and clear boundaries, you will be overlooked because people tend to believe what they perceive, and if what they see is softness without structure, they won't hesitate to take advantage of you. The Stoic philosopher Seneca, who lived and wrote within the brutal court of Emperor Nero, put it bluntly: he who always plays the good man among the wicked is preparing his own downfall. A true Stoic never abandons virtue, but he doesn't wear it like a costume to please the world. Either he wields it like a sword, sharp, balanced, and silent unless called for in the real world. Kindness alone is not a strategy. That's why Marcus Aurelius once warned, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who did the injury, not because you shrink, but because you rise." Because real strength doesn't come from retaliation. It comes from composure and boundaries. A genuine Stoic must possess the insight of a philosopher and the calm of a warrior. They never promoted naivete. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire riddled with betrayal and war. Epictetus, once a slave, endured cruelty with unshakable poise. Seneca navigated one of the most dangerous political courts in history. None of them ever confused morality with weakness. They understood that in a world full of schemers, you must not be paranoid, but you must be precise. Seneca once said, "You must live among the wicked, but live like yourself." That is the middle path. The path of clarity. It doesn't ask you to become cold, it asks you to become clear, to stop expecting the world to reward you simply because you're good, and to start living as someone who understands human nature, but refuses to betray his own. This isn't cruelty. It's wisdom. To walk the Stoic path is not to avoid harm, but to become someone who cannot be manipulated by the fear of harm, someone who sees through flattery, someone who silences manipulation with presence, and when faced with injustice, doesn't respond with weakness, but with measured strength. No, you don't have to become ruthless, but you do have to stop living in blindness. And maybe, by now, you're asking yourself, how do I walk that tightrope? How do I avoid being used without becoming bitter or closed off? That very question is the next truth we'll explore together, because there is a path, a way between the extremes of submission and aggression, and it begins the moment you stop apologizing for having a spine. Part 4. The Stoic line between virtue and voluntary slavery. Earlier, we realized that being good doesn't mean disappearing. Kindness does not mean letting others trample over your boundaries, because a value, if never tested, remains just an untouched ideal. Take the story of Maria, for example, a teacher known for her warmth and dedication. She stayed after class, replied to emails at midnight, and always filled in for absent colleagues. Maria was the good one, no doubt about it. But over time, her silence and constant willingness became something others expected by default. And when she finally said no to a last-minute request, she wasn't met with empathy, but disappointment, not because Maria had changed, but because she had unknowingly trained others to believe that her kindness had no limits. Her boundaries were mistaken for availability, her virtue for servitude. That is the tragedy of naive goodness. It moves through life believing the world will reflect its own heart, that if we are kind, others will be too, that sacrifice will be seen, that fairness will just naturally happen. But what happens instead? Disillusionment, a quiet bitterness, and a buried frustration. Because naive goodness often projects nobility onto people who haven't earned it. It becomes an inner war between what you give and what never comes back in return. The Stoics taught us a sharper way to live. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, people will lie, betray, and disappoint, but he must remain true to his nature. Yet he never said we must tolerate abuse. Epictetus never claimed that virtue means staying silent in the face of disrespect. On the contrary, He taught this. Stop placing value on what's outside your control, the praise of others, their approval, their perception of your kindness. None of that is within your command. Stoic kindness is firm, it sets boundaries. It knows how to say no. It knows when to walk away. It understands that not everyone deserves the best parts of you. And giving your best to those who only drain you is not generosity, it's mismanagement of your soul. Yes. You can live with justice, compassion, and unwavering principles and still be respected, even feared, because when strength is paired with kindness, it becomes presence, it becomes influence. Remember, the Stoics never endorsed cruelty, but they despised delusion, and nothing is more delusional than believing that virtue demands you accept mistreatment in silence. Now, you must face a brutally simple question. Is your kindness protecting your dignity or exposing your vulnerability? Does it come from strength or from the fear of being rejected if you ever speak up? Because if your version of goodness means accepting crumbs, suppressing your anger, excusing disrespect, while silencing your own needs, then I'm sorry. But that's not kindness. That's submission, and submission has no place in a Stoic life. But you don't have to lose yourself just to be heard. There is another path, a place where you don't have to abandon your values, nor bend your spine for anyone, a place where courage meets compassion, where you can speak clearly without shouting, where you can love without begging help, without being used, forgive without forgetting. In the next part, we'll walk that middle path together. We'll talk about how to stop being nice in a way that drains you without becoming hard or bitter, how to stand tall in this world calmly, intentionally, and without betraying your soul, because your life doesn't need more politeness, it needs more power. Anchored in virtue, we've just come to a powerful realization. Being a good person doesn't mean forgetting yourself, and kindness without boundaries doesn't lead to freedom. It leads to compliance. And now, this is where the real journey begins. Part 5. The Stoic path to inner strength. Many people, once they awaken from a life of quiet submission, fall into a subtle trap after years of saying yes when they meant no. After sacrificing their peace just to please others, they finally declare, no more. Never again. Sounds like a breakthrough, doesn't it? But ironically, what follows isn't always strength. Instead, they wear a mask, just the opposite of their old self. They become rigid, cold, withdrawn. They convince themselves that to escape the too nice version of who they were, they must become unfeeling. But this, according to the Stoics, is not transformation. It's an overreaction born from imbalance. Not wisdom, it's not evolution. It's overcorrection, and like all extremes, it becomes a new form of captivity, because when you abandon your true nature just to survive, you're not stepping into strength. You're simply hiding behind a shield made of avoidance, and avoidance is not freedom, it's fear in disguise, dressed up to look like control. True freedom, in the Stoic sense, doesn't come from becoming the opposite of who you used to be. It comes from returning to your center. Seneca once wrote, no man is free who is a slave to his reactions. Freedom is when your actions come from deliberate choice, not from unhealed wounds. It's when you stop performing virtue for an audience and start living in alignment, not apology. So, how do you stop being nice in the old way without betraying your essence? First, reclaim your voice. You may have been taught that speaking up, setting boundaries, or saying no is selfish. But selfishness isn't asserting yourself. Selfishness is demanding someone else shrink themselves so you can feel comfortable. The Stoic knows speaking truth without cruelty isn't arrogance. It's dignity. When you say, I do not accept this, you're not doing harm. You're honoring your reasoned judgment. your prohairesis, which, in Stoic philosophy, is the very heart of inner strength. Second, learn the art of refusal. No is not a wall. It is a declaration of what you value. You don't need to yell it. You don't owe anyone a justification. A quiet, steady no, spoken from clarity, carries more weight than 1,000 explanations. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, if it's not right, don't do it. If it's not true, don't say it. And that principle applies just as much to your boundaries as it does to your behavior. Those who never learn how to say no will always be controlled by those who never ask for permission. Third, notice who reacts when you change. When you begin to shift, when you stop shrinking yourself to fit others' expectations, some people will resist. They'll call you difficult, different, even selfish. But as Epictetus said, what matters isn't what they say, it's how you respond. These aren't signs that you're failing. They're proof that you've broken a quiet, unspoken contract, one that let others benefit from your silence. To those who depended on your compliance, your growth will feel like betrayal. Don't mistake their discomfort for your mistake. Remember Lena, a friend who always said yes. She was the reliable one, the helper, the listener. She never asked for anything in return. But one day, when Lena began reclaiming space for herself, turning down invitations, saying no when she disagreed, and prioritizing rest instead of forcing herself to always show up, the first thing she encountered was surprise. One of her closest friends looked at her and said, "You've changed." And she had, but not in the way people often fear. She didn't become distant. She wasn't harsh. She simply started living truthfully. And for the first time in many years, she began to respect herself more than the likable, agreeable version of her that others had grown used to and adored. So what comes next? Fourth, stop trying to make everyone understand you. The truth is, not everyone will walk alongside you as you evolve. And that's not a problem, that's just how it is. You don't need the world's approval to grow. They weren't built to understand your path. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good person should be. Be one. You don't need to maintain a pleasing persona. What matters is staying in alignment with yourself. You owe no loyalty to the past version of you that made others feel comfortable. Your real loyalty belongs to the person you are now, the one who has the courage to stand tall, even when misunderstood." Fifth, trade your desire to be accepted for a commitment to being authentic. Because when you start acting from truth, rather than from the need to please, some people may feel unsettled. They might become distant or confused, but at the same time, you'll quietly inspire others, even if they never say it out loud. And most importantly, you'll start to respect yourself. And self-respect, the kind that comes from deep within, is the one kind of respect that no one can take away from you. This journey doesn't ask you to become cold, sharp, or intimidating. It only asks that you become whole. Seneca never taught us to be feared. He taught us to be steady. And Marcus Aurelius never said we should aim to please. He simply reminded us, live in alignment with your highest reason. And now, this is the turning point. The moment where a choice must be made. Will you continue diluting who you are, just to maintain a pleasant image in others' eyes? Or will you step into a new kind of presence, one that doesn't demand attention, and no longer begs for approval? Because what's at stake here isn't just how others see you. It's this. Will you spend this one brief life living under the expectations of others, or in the clear light of your own truth? Part 6. The Stoic decision to reclaim yourself. It's time to stop pretending. Let's be honest. How much longer are you going to wear that good person mask? Always agreeable, always available, always saying yes, trying so hard not to disappoint, not to offend, not to make anyone uncomfortable. But how much more of your time, your voice, your dignity are you willing to trade, just to maintain an image that was never really yours, but one the world finds convenient to place upon you? That's not virtue. That's not nobility. That's a quiet kind of captivity. A velvet cage, wrapped in polite praise, for being predictable, for being non-threatening, for being easy to ignore. But here's the truth. The one few dare to say out loud, no one is coming to rescue you. There's no prize waiting for your silence. No one is going to give back the years you've lost trying to please. Because as long as you keep making yourself useful at the cost of yourself, someone will always be ready to use you. Not because they're cruel, but because that's how the world works. And as the Stoics have long reminded us, nature does not respond to your good intentions. It responds to your actions. You can keep playing the role society handed you, kind, selfless, endlessly understanding, endlessly tolerant, but be prepared to be overlooked. Be prepared for quiet resentment to slowly erode your days, to disappear inside the very kindness you thought would protect you. Or, you can wake up. You can choose a new path. You can decide that your generosity will no longer be automatic, but intentional. That your kindness will no longer be born of fear, but come from strength. That you will stop begging for approval like someone knocking at the door of validation. Because true freedom, as the Stoics taught, is not found in pleasing others. It's found in self-respect. And the moment you stop asking for permission to exist, is the moment you become untouchable. If this message stirred something inside you, don't just walk away and forget it. Subscribe, and stay with us. There's more truth ahead.